My name is Oladoso Adenike, and I'm the founder of Highly Climate Action Initiative. And ahead of the International Democracy Day, which is going to happen on the 15th of September, with one of the most important experts and director of one of the famous democracy institute, which is the Danish Institute for Parties and Democracy, Elizabeth Pilegaard, and she's going to be telling us more about her work that she has been doing in order to shape democracy, because we've come across different terminologies that talked about the fact that in solving the climate crisis or other defining issue of our time, we need to pause democracy, that democracy is not needed. Why there are some other thoughts that talks about the fact that we need more democracy and not less. And so she's going to be unraveling the whole issues that talks about democracy and why it is important in dealing with the issue or the defining issue of our time right now. And so she will briefly tell us about herself and what her organization is doing to push on democracy. So thank you so much for joining me, and for your busy time, you were still able to join me. And so please, can you just introduce yourself and tell us more about your work?
I will, and thank you for having me. As you said, I am the Executive Director of the Danish Institute for Parties and Democracy, DIPD in short. We are a self-governed institution based out of Copenhagen, Denmark, that has worked since 2010 in supporting democracies internationally. We've worked in more than 30 different countries, supporting particular political parties to develop democratically and thereby strengthening democracies in different countries. When we look at democracy, democracy is under pressure globally, and therefore our kind of work together with many other democracy organizations is important. And why is democracy important? Well, it's the governance system that seems to have worked best. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but has worked best for the most of people. And by saying that, I mean that when we look at statistics and research, democratic countries, the population in those countries live longer, are more healthy, are more wealthy, and the countries are more peaceful. And those statistics are quite, I think, essential for living a good life. So democracy as a governance system provides the best form of conditions for populations to thrive, for people to develop themselves and to educate themselves. And I think that's a compelling argument for democracy.
Thank you so very much. And this leads me to my next question that talks about the fact that can democracy alone solve the pressing issues that we have in the world today, be it climate change, pandemic, and the rest? Do you think it's a capable instrument?
Well, what's the alternative? That autocrats or dictators decide how things are going to be solved? I doubt. So yes, democracy as a governance system and as an approach to life, as a culture where we try and include as many as possible and find the best possible solution, where we seek dialogue, where we seek alliance and compromises. If we want political solutions, that is the best system, and at least has worked in many democratic countries to find the best possible solutions. It's where we engage as many as possible, and we try to seek solutions that also benefits as many as possible. So I don't think it's a question of the governance system, but it's a question of having the best politicians who are able to make brave decisions if we are to tackle particularly the climate change and the way we live now.
Thank you so very much. You mentioned about dialogue. You mentioned about brave actions taken by politicians. So I want to ask, like, how are you strengthening the voice of democracy through your institution and political parties? How are you bringing young people together, or parties together to see that you mobilize for a strengthened democracy? Because right now, it's looking like democracy is failing, So what are the extra criteria you think we need to bring about voices together to strengthen democracy, looking at the fact that democracy is void, is a broad area, maybe freedom to press, freedom to speak, freedom to, to have access to livable future and the rest. So how do we bring or strengthen the voices of democracy?
That was a very long question, but I'll try and respond to it.
Yeah.
So first of all, democracy is under pressure globally, but there are still countries where democracy is functioning and providing good conditions for population. So when you say it's not working, that's true in some countries, and we can delve into that. There are countries in Africa where certainly democracy has been under pressure and been criticized for not delivering democracy well enough. We've seen military taking over in several countries in Western Africa. We've seen them in Myanmar taking over the country, and that's of course a great concern. Some of the background for democracy being under pressure is that we haven't been good enough to have solid politicians at the forefront as leaders, and we are still challenged by corruption in some countries. And corruption is really an enemy of democracy because it pulls the money not to the majority but to few of the population. And democracy is the opposite. It's supposed to ensure that we have accountable systems and that we have strong institutions. So there is still some work to be done to, as you say, to ensure freedom of press, freedom of expression, having strong institution, and having independent media. Independent media is also vastly under pressure many places. And when we don't have independent media, we have a few taking control of our media and by that undermining our democracies and spreading both disinformation and fake information. And that certainly does not help our systems. Then you asked about young people, and we have in our strategy a focus on ensuring that as many young people are engaged in political activities. And we work a lot with political parties in trying to ensure that they are more inclusive and more representative, so that young voices also can have access in the parties. That is a huge challenge in many places in the world, that political parties are still quite conservative, and that the power is among leaders that are not that young and are also predominantly male. So there's both a gender and an age issue in terms of getting better representation. But we need the young people to engage, and we have luckily some young people who are willing to engage. But unfortunately, we also have created a very harsh dialogue on the social media and in politics that does not invite young people to engage, because the tone is very tough, and that it simply does not attract young people to engage. They would rather spend their time on discussing solutions and finding other ways. So there's a job to do for the political parties in terms of making sure that they have a line of younger people to come in and to thrive and to get influence in the parties.
Yeah, thank you so very much. You are so phenomenal in answering this long question of mine. We literally touch on every aspect that I was thinking of. And you mentioned about the fact that corruption is an enemy of democracy, which I see is a very perfect kind of description of what and how endangered democracy is today. And so I just want you to take a look an overview of what could lead to a broken democracy globally, or maybe in some parts of the world? Is it the fact that we need more representation of young people or women, or what it looks like from different countries that are doing well in their democracy and the list that is doing the least in democracy? So what could lead to a broken democracy in our world today?
Well, maybe we should turn around and see what do we need to strengthen democracies. Definitely corruption does not build up democracies. Rather, it challenges it, and lack of representation challenges it. So what do we need? We need more democratic political parties where having access and influence is easier, and where money not necessarily plays a part. I know that I've been speaking to young politicians in Nigeria saying, it's not, I want to participate in politics, and it's not because I'm young, but it's because I'm poor. I don't have the money to stand for election. And that's another challenge with our electoral systems. In many countries, it's very costly to run a campaign and to engage in politics. So that's one part. I mean, in some countries where they have money, they subsidize the political parties so they have money for campaigns, and thereby more representation is happening. So there is a financial aspect of it, and then there's the technicalities of how elections are run. They can look differently, but you can try and ensure that there is a broader representation of marginal groups, of young people, and so on. You could put quotas in. You can. There are other ways of trying to broaden the representation.
Thank you so very much. And yeah, it's just exactly what you just mentioned, that in campaigning, it's not even about joining political party. It's about you having that money, because sometimes, or most times, maybe in the scenarios of Nigeria, it's very costly. Just purchasing a political, presidential ticket alone, it's costly. One of the parties had as much as 100 million per ticket. So where do you get the money from? And you have not even started campaigning yet. And so I really welcome your ideas of how democracy could be endangered today if it is not properly done. And so what do you think, or what is your advice to people that just want to do something to find solutions or to strengthen our democracy, but doesn't have the power or the access to the necessary fund that they need? What do you think? What is your advice?
Well, the short is to organize yourself. And we've seen that in several countries, that associations, group of people, movements, were not necessarily political parties, but movements of people who are engaged either in a thematic issue or in wanting change. If they organize themselves, they actually can put a pressure on the current system. And also in undemocratic countries, social movements can actually do a difference. They need to organize themselves. They need to reach out. So it's a bottom-up approach. So get people together, discuss if it's physically or online meetings. I'm sure there are a lot of young people in Nigeria and others who wants to see change, and they need to meet and talk and organize themselves.
Okay, thank you so very much. So we'd like to hear more about what your organization have done concerning democracy or strengthening the voices of democracy. Can you just tell us?
Yeah, I can do it shortly because time is running out.
Sure.
As I mentioned, we are working in 25 different countries, and we're working through partnerships with Danish political parties, working with political parties in different countries. And in that, it's often to do with the inner machine room of the political parties, how to help the party develop, how to look at campaigns, how to look at the youth wings, women wings, if that's a part of trying to democratize the party. It could be on elections, it could be on particularly engaging with youth outside of the political parties. So there are many different ways of working together, but it's about partnerships and exchange. We've had democracy for more than 200 years in Denmark, so our political parties here have experience to share on how they've developed themselves, but sometimes they also learn a lot from what they get from other countries. So the exchange is very essential in our work.
Thank you so very much for your time, for speaking with me, for highlighting these issues. And I really find your answers to be really thoughtful about young people organizing themselves, trying to fight for the cause of strengthening or upholding our democracy, because it's key towards addressing pressing global issues that we have today. That without democracy, we might not be able to solve the defining issue of our time. And thank you for the work your organization is doing in trying to strengthen political participation, because that is part of what we need in solving the climate crisis and other things. We need political will in making that possible. And really thank you for coming today. I really appreciate your time and for speaking with me as well.
Thank you so much, and all the best, and great to know that there are a lot of young people out there wanting to change the world. We need that. Thank you so much.